If you want to impress someone with the POTUS1 Perspective, then check out my new book, On the Banks of the Potomac, Life Lessons from George Washington's Back Porch. This book has 7 chapters, starting with a chapter on Mount Vernon, and then the history of that place where George Washington lived. It has a section about the history of the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, the organization that preserves the legacy of George Washington. I also have a little section about my trips to Mount Vernon and what I learned there. There's also a chapter about the music, art, and literature of Mount Vernon and George Washington, and from what I could research about George Washington, about music, art, and literature, which I'm sure there's more than what I could find. Then also, I think my favorite chapter, which is about Martha Washington, because in my opinion, Martha Washington deserves her own chapter because she was, in my opinion, George Washington's closest confidant. And then I have a chapter about the modern presidency, the parallels and differences between the modern presidency and George Washington's time, and the America First mindset, the America First mindset. And then also, next chapter is about the POTUS1 Perspective, which to find more about POTUS1, check out my older book, POTUS1, available on Amazon in 3 formats: hardcover, paperback, and Kindle. The POTUS1 Perspective chapter in this book here has 4 sections. The first one is about inoculation and what George Washington experienced, and relating that to today's time period in our times. I also talk about elections and the Constitution, what it says in the Constitution. And then the next section is about the Freemasons and George Washington's involvement, a little synopsis about that. I also talk about the history of the transgenderism in schools today and in our times, in our culture, and that George Washington would not be for this transgenderism because there are so many letters and correspondence of George Washington wanting to take care of his kids and make his kids very learned and educated, and he wouldn't want those things permeated into his kids' education at such a young age, because that wasn't a part of the culture, and it should never be a part of the culture in our times or in our education for our children. We have to save the children. The next chapter in this book is about friendships. A lot of friendships, or you could call them frenemies, friends that turn where the friendship dissolved, or friends that George Washington had for a lifetime, and the differences and similarities in those friendships that George Washington had. And then the last chapter is about all the different things that I could find in research about the memoriam or memorial for George Washington. Like you could have like statues or pictures or all different kinds of things about George Washington and his memory, you could say. But so check out my book, On the Banks of the Potomac. It's available on Amazon in the book category, in paperback and hardcover. Check it out.